Hello, good morning. Welcome everyone to another live chat discussion here on NextOppSocial. I am Richelle Wright Wilson. As always, I'm joined by Joanne Buford, and today we're talking about the holidays, specifically the entrepreneurial Christmas or holiday or whatever you celebrate wish list. But before we jump into it, if you're watching with us here, either live or on the replay, please make sure you hit that subscribe button below so you never miss an interview, a live, or an incredible discussion we have here at NextOppSocial. So I love that we're talking about this today. It's timely, right? It's November, or it's almost Thanksgiving. We're a day away. But that's because 2020 is the year of the rise and fall of small businesses, right? Like small businesses, entrepreneurs have been a hotter topic than normal this year. And small businesses in general play a huge role in our economy, whether you realize it or not. Here in Michigan, Governor Whitmer shut things down again last week. But I actually happened to hear her say, after she made her announcement and most people tune out, she was encouraging people to shop small as well this year and in their own community. And she gave a statistic that kind of put it in perspective. She said that if you dedicate just 10% of what you spend, right, of what you're going to do your spending on, towards small businesses, specifically within your community, it brings in billions into just the Michigan economy. I cannot remember and I cannot seem to find what the numerical amount of the billions is, but it's billions with a B, regardless. And even just 1 billion, that's just an incredible amount. Just 10%. That's all. That's such a tiny fraction of what we're doing our daily spending on. So I know specifically today, we're not talking about necessarily how to thrive as a small business, but I do want to preface all of this by saying that the impact on shopping local and shopping within your community this year alone is the difference of, it's going to change people's lives. It's the difference between someone feeding their family or losing everything. So it's important to remember that, I think, this year more than any year.
Yeah, I love that you led with that. Because for me, it's just common sense, right? We don't have to get esoteric. You don't have to be an intellect to understand this, right? Mm-hmm. The majority of the small business owners I know that I interact with, they typically live in close proximity to their business, mm-hmm. right? And even if they're operating remotely, I'm saying the majority, right? Even if they're operating remotely, they're still living, breathing, handshaking, interacting, eyeballing, now, throw the fist bump, whatever, because of COVID. They're operating within their communities, right? And spending locally basically takes your dollar and it circulates through your community again, right? Mm-hmm. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what you really want to the extent possible. I'm acutely aware of the fact that when I spend my money with a quote unquote big box store or whatever, right, a large corporation, that there's a good chance that the majority of those revenues are going elsewhere to mm-hmm. executives that live in other places other than where I live. And quite frankly, have a less of an investment in the people where I live. And if you're thinking about it from an entrepreneurial standpoint, right, people oftentimes ask, well, what's the best thing you can do for entrepreneurs? Well, healthy neighborhoods would be a good start, right? The best thing you can do for Detroit entrepreneurs is ensure that households in Detroit are healthy, are stable, right? And that are financially solvent. That's the best thing you can do to improve an environment to make it more fertile for entrepreneurship, right? When people have disposable income, entrepreneurs thrive. So, I thought that was so apropos the way you started. That's absolutely incredible. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, when she brought that up, it kind of came out of nowhere, and I was only like kind of half listening, but when I heard it, I was like, everyone needs to know that. I think, like, knowing that it doesn't even take that much effort of you spending within your community. She's not even saying you can't buy from Amazon or whatever, but like when you make a conscious effort, it is a extremely quick and very visible impact. Just as quick and visible of an impact it is when you don't.
Right.
over a long period of time. So,
I love it. And for me, it was fascinating. It was tempting for me to be flippant about this list, right? And I think about what is my entrepreneurial wish list?
yeah.
What's my Christmas list, so to speak? But you already know, the more I thought about it, the more I started doing a deeper dive into the things that I thought would make the biggest difference, not just for myself as an entrepreneur, but just for the entrepreneurial ecosystem in general. And, one of the things that I thought about a lot was the ideal of having a think tank. And let me be careful about this. Let me preface this with this. If there are think tanks that are already existing, this is not to be dismissive of those think tanks and those organizations that are doing good work within the Detroit Metropolitan community. But the bottom line is you can never have enough, right? And, what I would love to see is a think tank that can actually bring an agenda. The one thing I've learned about politics over the years, if you don't bring an agenda to a politician, if you don't bring something to hold them accountable to hold their feet to the fire, 9 times out of 10, they're going to do just enough to get elected. It just is what it is. It's just human nature, right? And if we had a think tank that was consistently putting out content, consistently putting out information, consistently shaping the marketplace of ideals in favor of entrepreneurs, particularly small business owners, right? Because we have larger organizations and larger think tanks, and oftentimes some of the larger chambers, we know who they're catering to, and it's all good. That's their purpose. That's what they're set up for. Look, I'm not knocking that, but we need people who are mindful of what's going on the ground level, with people who own salons, with people who own collision shops, with people who are in the entertainment industry, people who are basically providing the everyday services, the grit and grind that most households are utilizing on a daily basis. A think tank to talk more about grocery stores, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And basically apply pressure, keep it top of mind, right? And say, look, these are the things we need in the community. And, I'm thinking about how certain organizations, I remember like the Urban League and the NAACP, the name two in particular, they used to grade politicians, right? They used to grade them based on their extent that they were being responsible to certain issues. I mean, that would be like incredible. I think that would be so powerful if we had something like that here in Detroit metropolitan area. And I think about that all the time, right? I remember that one quintessential moment that occurred when Hillary Clinton was running for president, and she was cornered by Black Lives Matter. And I remember a lot of people got upset with her response, but I didn't. She basically said to them in so many words, yeah, you got me cornered back here. Where's the agenda? What do you want? Give me some specific things to act on that you want in particular. What are they? And for me, it was fascinating to kind of sit and watch the interaction and see that there was not a specific line item agenda, right? And that's what we need. Like, we need specific things that you want to see. And look, depending on the nature of your business, some things are more important than others, but there's some things that are just kind of universal when it comes to entrepreneurship development and business development. And those are some of the things we need to think of, right? Particularly anything that we can do to make it easier and more transparent in terms of licensing in the skilled trades. Anything we can do to make it easier, more transparent, to understand how insurance companies pay for certain things, right? And how that impacts your ability to get your car repaired, quite frankly, getting your teeth fixed, right? These types of things I think about every single day.
Yeah.
That would be one of the items.
Yeah. I think that's super that's super important too, because we talk about too of like, you can Google things all day, and and we should do our own research, and we should be, don't just like assume you know it all and like move forward with that. But truthfully, you also don't know what you don't know, and you don't even know to even where to start with that. And I feel like that statistic also of small businesses like die out, there's a certain amount die out within the first 2 to 3 years. Like, I'd really love to like never hear that statistic again, but a lot of that is because of this just glamorized idea of entrepreneurship, and not in this weird notion of like certain individuals or high level people who are like, who've gotten to that point where they're very successful, who are not willing to share that knowledge, right, openly and transparently, not understanding that that's not a threat to them in any way. by doing so. So, that's why I appreciate what we do here on NextOppSocial to help cultivate that kind of think tank opportunity. But I think, it's super important.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, gosh, there's so many different directions we can go with that, right? But once again, this ideal of transparency and people really understanding what's required. Gosh, okay, not me done. Let me not even go down that rabbit hole right now, because that's a whole episode in and of itself. So yes. And then of course to kind of segue into what we do. I mean, a lot of my motivation for this endeavor, NextOppSocial, as you're well aware of, Rochelle, I mean, we're on the same mind as this, is providing a space where there can be a marketplace of ideals. I believe that the only way to make sure ideal is good is to beta test it, which is to put it out there and see if it can stand the test of, criticism, see if it can stand the test of time, more important than that. To see, it's so important that other entrepreneurs see other entrepreneurs who look like them. And I'm not just talking about complexion, I'm just talking about stages of entrepreneurship, whether you're ideating in the beginning and whether you're taking those first steps and getting started. When you reach a point where you've leaned in and you're starting to generate revenues, like how do you scale? How do you grow? How do you structure? It's important to see people like when you start having success, because sometimes your talent and your work ethic can take you places that your character and your lack of consistency can't keep you, right? And so when I say character and integrity, I'm not always talking about it from a moral standpoint, but I'm talking about, have you developed the habits? Do you have a certain integrity to your habits, right? Are you consistently doing certain things that will result in you laying a fantastic foundation? And yes, I am talking about character as well, right? But, seeing and hearing other business owners going through those stages is so absolutely important. And that's, it's a huge motivating factor here. As I was thinking about this grocery list, I was thinking to myself earlier this morning, what are the things that I would do that whether I was being compensated for or not, I would be about that business, right? And this is one of those things. I think it's just so absolutely imperative that we provide spaces, that we provide venues, and we provide avenues for entrepreneurs to get this information. Like, motivational videos are great. I'm not knocking them. Inspirational videos are great. I'm not knocking it. Those things are important, right? But people also need a space where there's some practicality in there too, right? And then, I'm going to say this. I know it kind of frustrates people sometimes I say it, but who cares, right? The bottom line is, or at least my level of I care isn't high enough to be concerned about it. But look, you have a lot of people out here dispensing advice about entrepreneurship, and they're not entrepreneurs.
Right.
You gotta be aware of that, right? But I'm just being honest. I'm not knocking people. Let me say this. I'm not knocking you. Everyone gets their start somewhere. But be careful of the W-2s who are speaking on 1099 lifestyles. And I'll just leave it like that, right? They sound like 1099s. They adorn themselves like 1099s, but they're getting the check from an employer. And when you wake up in the morning knowing that you don't have an employer paying your way, that you don't have somebody cutting you a check whether you perform or not, it is a different feeling than waking up as an entrepreneur every single day and knowing that your compensation is directly predicated upon your performance, that you don't get a minute off. So, that's why I think what we're doing here is so relevant and important. And quite frankly, it may sound counterintuitive. I think we need to see more tools like this out here in the marketplace, the extent to which we can give people more alligator skin and more information and more tools so they can navigate these waters, this entrepreneurial life. It's just going to be better for everybody.
Yeah. I think also too, locally, I'd love to see more of like, it's not that these things aren't available or present, but like they're hard to find or they're not getting the traction and support that they need. But in terms of like more just even entrepreneurial support groups or networking groups or opportunities for you to meet more people that can be also you can be resources to each other. It's not that these things, and this year is a weird year, like we can't do a lot in person and whatnot. But I think what happens though too is when we move digitally, we get into a space where now we're in a global global network, and that's great. You have more options, but especially if I'm trying to put my money in the community, if I'm trying to encourage more creativity or more traction here to still benefit my own business and someone else's business. Like I would love to see a way for me to find the graphic designer in Detroit, or like a list, or whatever, like things like that are more accessible, more readily available, not just on a global scale, but on like a community scale, And again, it's not to say that maybe those things aren't available, but they're certainly not easy enough for me to find,
Yeah.
So I think that, it goes along with it too, is that some of these things, they do exist, but they're not capitalized or utilized on or promoted in a way that they probably need to be.
Yeah, I agree 100%. For me, it's always this tension that I have, right? Number one, there's a lot of activity, a lot of economic activities taking place in Detroit Metropolitan area that Detroiters, so to speak, and not individuals who are recently imported into Detroit, but Detroiters, people who've been here, just don't hear about, just don't learn about, just don't have an opportunity to participate in, right? And I encourage entrepreneurs to understand that usually the people who are making these decisions, they don't wake up in the morning, just to be transparent. They're not waking in the morning thinking, how can I F some ebony people today, right? How can I disenfranchise, and how can I make sure they don't participate? They're just waking up doing their thing, right? They're waking up, working on these projects, working on these endeavors, and there's not enough thought process put in as relates to inclusivity, right? And making sure that other people who may not look like them, may not hail from the same schools, locations, have the same relationships, or roll in the same circles, have an opportunity to participate, right? So I think about that. And I also think about the fact that you have to be hungry. I can't tell you how many times I've shown up unannounced, at events. I've shown up, and because I've researched, I dug, I was being nosy, I just made it a point to be in spaces and places where typically I wasn't part of that network, I wasn't part of that organization, I wasn't part of a particular group. But the moment I got wind of it, I made it my business to get there. As an entrepreneur, this is entrepreneurship. There's no one's responsibility to ensure that you're successful. It's your responsibility. There's no handouts here. Right? We're talking about entrepreneurship. So you have to have the hunger and the will and a tenacity to find information as best you can and equip yourself with the tools to be successful. And if that means showing up unannounced and making some people uncomfortable, fine. But what I will tell you is this: 90% of the time where I've shown up that way, I've gotten a warm welcome. And I'll put it that way. I'll leave it at that, right? But okay, back to the matter at hand, though.
What's next on the grocery list?
Yeah. This is what I would like to see. And I've thought about this a lot, right? And once again, there are organizations that are already doing this. And you hit the nail on the head. We just need to do a better job of promoting them. But what I would like to see is an organization, a curriculum, or some type of systemic process in the communities where someone can sit down in a chair, whether it be Zoom or in person, and learn about structuring their business. And we don't need to do deep dives, but just someone to say, look, this is between an S Corp, an LLC, a C Corp, and DBA, and just rudimentary understanding, right? Where people can get that. And then more importantly, not just how to set that business up on paper and what's required, but also how to maintain that business, right? If you have an LLC, you have the self-employment tax. If you have any type of business structure, cash flow, income statement, balance sheets, you don't need to do a deep dive with people. People should have a rudimentary understanding of what these documents mean to their business, right? You don't need to make people specialized in taxation, right? But give them a basic understanding. Okay, this is what this means now. You're a 1099, or you have a business, you're paying yourself a W-2. This is what it means, right? How to beta test, right? How to go from ideation to taking your ideal, putting it out there in the marketplace and just lean in and ask people to pay for it, right? And what that process sounds like and looks like. Leadership development. When you're an entrepreneur, you're a leader, whether you're ready for it or not, right? If you're going to be a very good entrepreneur, you better study leadership. And once again, we're not trying to turn people into some gigantic historical figure overnight, but just basic leadership principles, basic marketing skills, right? We need that in a program. And then, of course, last but not least, not only how to acquire capital, but how to manage the capital when you get it, right? Something basic. If we just had that, that would solve 90% of a business owner's problem, typically when they're anywhere from brand new to 2 to 5 years old. Those are the problems that business owners are dealing with most frequently. They don't even realize it, but those are the issues that they're really having. And I swear, if somebody came up with some type of platform that just dealt with that, oh my goodness, it would make such a tremendous impact, right? It would be huge. And it needs to not be in 4 or 5 different places, but consolidated underneath one umbrella. I mean, I get excited thinking about it all the time. I just haven't quite figured out how to do it at scale in a way that it can be monetized and make sense for the small business owner, but also make sense for the individuals who are participating. And maybe it doesn't need to make sense. Maybe we need to find individuals who already, quite frankly, are financially solvent and independent, who are willing to sacrifice their time, right? Mm-hmm. But do it in a way that it can be scaled. Because right now it's taking place between organizations, it's taking place one-on-one, belly to belly. But man, if that really existed, and it wasn't anyway, that would be a
and I agree, because again, like you said, there are some things, especially even locally, that do this a little bit, I think, and or they do parts of it. But you do it is important to cover that whole first to 5 years in business. Because again, you're going to hit these walls or plateaus or scaling problems, and what's going to either get you past that or through that is your ability to know how to work through that, right? And what keeps you in those places longer, or where you fail, is the anxiety and problems around not knowing, and if again, just having that resource of like, I'm here, I'm at this level, I have no idea how to get past this. I think what's amazing about having something like that is that there are very few problems that you're going to run into that someone else hasn't already got worked through. So there are solutions to your problems. There are, like, especially as a business owner, there's someone who has had that problem. There's someone who's worked through that problem. And yet again, it shouldn't be this issue to share with someone how to work through that, So
right.
Yeah, I agree that, having, proper education in a capacity and way that anyone who's really dedicated to working in this capacity, to being an entrepreneur, can take and utilize and move forward with.
Yes. Yeah, you keep going back to something that comes up time and time again when I'm working with particularly individuals who work within the B2B market, right? Serving other entrepreneurs and business owners. And look, entrepreneurship is competition, but I want to define competition a certain type of way, right? I think it's good that entrepreneurship involves competition, because competition sharpens you. It makes you better, right? And for me, when I think about competition, it's not about winning at other people's expenses, right? I think competition helps complete you as an entrepreneur when you're around the right folks. And this ideal that you're going to hoard your contacts, the ideal that you're going to hoard your knowledge, the ideal that you're going to hoard your know-how, it really doesn't serve you. It may feel like it serves you in the short term, but the bottom line is, if the ecosystem is not healthy, your business eventually is going to catch an L. It's not going to be healthy either, right? I think about it like, watching these National Geographic shows, right? You kill off a certain animal, or you kill off a certain plant, or you kill off a certain organism, and then you see the dominoes and how it negatively impacts the environment, right? And it doesn't happen right away, but over the course of time, things start getting sickly because there's certain things that are just missing, that aren't taking place anymore. There's no balance. And when you have a situation where people are competing to the extent where they're literally trying to kill each other, as opposed to just trying to compete for the sake of completing each other, that's when you have the problems, you know? And yeah, I guess that would be one of the items on my grocery list that I would address. Like, we need people to understand that lift as you climb. A rising tide truly lifts all ships. You want to see other people around you thriving, having success, right? We want to
Yeah.
see that dollar circulating, because if you don't behave in this way, what's going to end up happening is an organization that is much larger than you, an organization that probably does not reside or exist in your neighborhood, in your community, is going to fill that gap, right? So for me, it's just something to think about. And the other thing I'm thinking about is this pandemic, right? And I think about the ideal that in life, when challenges arise, there are things you go through and there are things that you grow through. And what I want more than anything is for Detroit in particular, of course, the global community, right? But I'm thinking specifically of Detroit and Detroit Metro. I want to see us grow through this, right? Because I believe the pandemic poses an opportunity for us to also get stronger, to get better, to learn the lessons, to not repeat the same mistakes, right? I think this pandemic has exposed a lot of weaknesses and deficits and issues that we have within the community. But it doesn't have to be a terrible ending to this story. So a lot of good things can come out of this. A lot of good things can be born out of some of the misery and difficulty and challenges that are occurring. And at the end of the day, when you think about entrepreneurship, it's usually born in times of crisis like this. This is when entrepreneurs typically thrive, and you see the emergence of new technologies, new ideals, new ways of doing things. It's a time that those of us who are entrepreneurs should be able to embrace, if we learn the lessons, right? If we make the necessary adjustments. And that's something that's on my wish list, that we come to understand this pandemic isn't going anywhere, and that it doesn't have to color every thinking moment of our lives. That at some point we emerge out of the rubble, and just have some incredible success stories that result. So those are the things I'm thinking about in terms of my wish list as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I was trying to think of what to elaborate on there, but I think that's so poignant, as someone who has done over the past few years a lot of physical work in Detroit, like I would be down there more often, or I'd be in downtown, or I'd be in those communities where I'm doing the work, where now I'm not physically showing up anywhere because of pandemic. It's not it's really easy to forget that these things were still there, and they need help thriving and whatnot, and they also need help shifting and adjusting in a way that can still be sustainable and do well, right? We don't, yes. I think what's important, especially now, is especially with the resurgence of Midtown and Cass Corridor and downtown and stuff like that, of visually stunning, incredible place to be. It's remembering that those areas, and even the areas surrounding it, they're just as important when we physically can't visit them, and they still need to thrive. So yeah.
Something, of course, that I've also dreamed about on my to-do list is, and now of course it's the TCF Center as opposed to Cobo Hall, which is great, glad to see that. Man, Detroit has so much talent.
Yeah.
It really does. To me, it's amazing. When I think about the talented individuals whom I meet, even online, and the relationships I've been able to develop during the pandemic by meeting people on LinkedIn and other places, local Detroiters have so much talent. It is so much energy in this city. You know, people say if you can survive in New York, you can survive anywhere. My counter argument is no, if you can survive in Detroit, you can survive anywhere. And you have, man, so many success stories are just burgeoning underneath the surface here. And I would love to see a conference. And we've talked about this. Maybe this becomes something we do over the course of the next 2 years and bring it together somehow, right? Let the universe conspire in our favor. That we have a conference full of gurus and not gurus, right? I want to put together a conference not full of individuals who just, I don't want to see the talking heads. Really, I don't. I'm sorry. I'm not hating. I want to be in a room full of people who are going through the shit, who've overcome some stuff, who are willing to be transparent and sit down and say, look, this is how I overcame. I want to see that. I want to see a lineup of like 40 business owners from a variety of different industries, all shapes, complexions, ethnicity, religions, et cetera, and just go hard. Like give them their 10, 15 minutes, say, look, this is what I'm here to talk about. Almost like a TED Talk type situation just for entrepreneurs though, right? I would love to see that. And once again, there are events and there are initiatives that are doing similar things to this, but I want to see more of Detroit business owners highlighted at these events. And I want to hear from those individuals who are overcoming, right? That's what I want to see. And I mean, I can see it clear as day. Like I see the vision, I see the entrepreneurs, I see the content they're talking about. I think that would be so cool if we had something like that on a yearly basis.
I think especially going into next year and the experiences that everyone's been going through this year.
Yes.
Truly talented people, truly creative people, true people who are true entrepreneurs, when the stress hits the wall, when shit hits the fan, some of the most incredible experiences come out of that, you know. Yes. And I would love to, like, I think about my own creative work, and sometimes I need to put myself on a pressure deadline, right? For me to really execute at this insanely high level, right? And it would be so amazing to hear the stories and ways that people, when there were no other outlets or no other options, they had to figure this out, to hear how they did that. In a true effort of, things are always going to happen. We're always going to have difficult situations, but here's a community and people who have experienced it, have dealt with it, and you don't have to feel alone through that struggle this year, or that struggle when you hit those moments. Because I do think that was also a big problem with this year and everything, is that people felt very isolated in their struggles, isolated in what they were going through in their business, feeling like that they were the only ones struggling to get through that situation, when the reality is even if you were thriving, you had different struggles of scaling or whatever, right? You know, it's different. Yep. Everyone had their own stressors, especially in terms of business, but to know that there are specific people out there that you can lean on and refer to, and they are here in your community to get that support. It should be so powerful to hear all that. Yeah.
Yes, I concur 100%. Yeah, there's nothing to elaborate there. You hit the nail on the head. I am becoming acutely aware about the importance of mental health. That will be on my grocery list. And I'm gonna be even more specific as it relates to men. And even more, I'm gonna do even more specific dive as it relates to African American men, right? And I know this may land differently depending on your generation, depending on the household you grew up in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when I think about my peer group and the struggles that a lot of African American men have had during this pandemic, look, I feel safe in making this general statement that a lot of the men that grew up in my peer group, our sense of self-worth is directly tied to our ability to go out and be successful and earn revenue, earn an income, take care of families, handle our business, right? And there was already a pandemic of mental health issues taking place in the United States of America already. I know this current pandemic that we are fixed upon, coupled with the dire economic situations that people are in, man, it's just bad news. It's bad news. I'm having conversations more and more often. I think because finally things are snowballing. Mm-hmm. Things are finally reaching that breaking point for a lot of folks, right? Things are, states shut down again, and people hadn't even recovered from the initial quote unquote shutdown. And now it's like, what the hell am I going to do through November, December, January, and February if things don't get resolved on the federal level to kind of ameliorate a lot of these issues we're having? But man, the importance of mental health and guidance. I mean, I would like to see a clinic on every 3-4 mile radius for individuals to be able to walk into, and even if it is just an hour, to be able to talk to someone and work through some stuff. Because I'm afraid that a lot of people have been inebriating themselves to get through this. Inebriation isn't going to even work very soon. And, people act out in really strange ways when they are stressed like this. And people need that help. That would be on my grocery list to get that taken care of.
Yeah. Talking about it, being transparent that you're struggling with it. Again, it's that other situation of it's not just you, it's pretty much everyone around you in some capacity or some way. Mm-hmm. It is ignorant to think that the people around you are not struggling with whatever they're struggling with on a daily basis. But even this year, just in general, it's all heightened. It might be a different issue or a different reason, but everyone's dealing with something. And this year, especially, I think you're exactly right that it's pushed it over the edge of all those things that to a point, and especially, and if you're listening to this and you think like, I wonder if I'm there, you're there, you're there when you're there, when your cup is overflowing and you can't do anymore. But the power of vocalizing that out loud is unbelievable. It's even if you aren't able to work through the issue in that immediate moment of vocalizing it, you free up the space in your mind to come up to get to that point. So I think it's just even if you say things out loud to nobody, right? Just putting things out there vocally into the world is really, really important. And when you are honest and transparent about that, you're going to very quickly realize other people who become empathetic for you being willing to share that and can be your support system as well.
Yes. You said something really caught my attention just there, Rochelle, and that was having a space, right? Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, I'm just speaking from my own personal experience as a man that is ebony complected and it exists in a certain culture and menu, right? People don't oftentimes feel safe articulating that vulnerability, and be able to provide a space where those conversations can take place is just so absolutely important. So yeah, I'm into that. There's a lot of, I try not to highlight the negative. I always want to stay on positive, but you just gotta be real, right? Mm-hmm. I want people to understand what is the difference between passive and residual income. You brought this up, and I've been it's stuck the entire time, right? Since our initial discussion.
I hate the word passive income.
People need to understand what passive and residual income really means, because there's just a lot of games being ran out there, right? It's just a lot of games. And what I caution people to understand is, look, not every opportunity that is new and novel is bad. But you have to understand and have some working foundational tools to understand what's legitimate and what's not. and understand what's passive and what's not, and what's residual and what's not. Because there are a lot of people chirping and talking about stuff that just isn't going to stand the test of time, ain't going to last 5 minutes, right? I need people to understand that. You know, I guess at the end of the day, what I want entrepreneurs, new entrepreneurs to understand is that when you are talking about passive and residual income, especially when you're talking about passive and residual income, there are no overnight success stories.
Mm-mm.
There's a story behind the story behind the story, and somebody paid a price and there was some time spent, right? When you talk about passive and residual income, what I want entrepreneurs, if nothing else, I want this to stick and stay in your craw, in your mindset, in your bones. That in the beginning, as an entrepreneur, when you're especially trying to build a business like that, you have to be willing to do work that you're not being paid for. So later on, you can be paid for work you no longer have to do, right? And you need to understand that. You need to understand that your first 2 seconds, 2 minutes, perhaps even 2 years, you have to work with like gazelle-like urgency, running from a lion, to build an organization that, or business that will produce those type of results, right? And this is where I kind of look. I understand. I believe you got to be real with people, right? Look, taking care of yourself is important. We just talk about mental health. That's important. Eating right is important. Exercising is important. Spending time, being healthy is important. But let me tell you, there's no such thing as balance. Get that out of your head.
Yeah.
It's just priority management.
Yeah.
There's no such, it's priority management, right? What's necessary? What's the priority? What's the thing that takes precedent over everything else? When you're an entrepreneur, that's what you have to get good at. There's no such thing as time management. You can't manage for time. You can't take time out for a drink. You can't befriend time. You can't negotiate with time. You can't make a deal with time. Time does not care. Okay, there's priority management. And when you are starting up a business that is predicated upon creating passive and residual income, you are going to have to burn the bridges. Okay, you're going to have to work harder than you ever have before in life again. Your stomach is going to touch your back. Okay, you got to be willing to endure that pain because that's what's required. And, you know, this is coming from someone that has built a business that pays a residual income. This is coming from someone who has a little bit of passive income going on. This is coming from someone who's done the sprints and been knocked on his butt, done the sprinting, built it again, knocked on the butt, built it again, enjoyed the benefits of it. You know, I've tasted the low moments and the high moments. And I'm going to tell you, in order to get to a certain altitude where you have a degree of comfort to take care of your families and achieve the things you want to achieve, unless you're okay with sitting in a home with no heat, sipping on beers, watching MMA fights. If you're okay with that, then this doesn't apply to you. Okay. But for the individuals that want to build a business where you can enjoy that quote unquote 6-figure income. People always talk about 7, 8 figures. Just do 6. Get to 6 first, and you'll trust me. You're okay. You're still part of the top 2% if you get to 6-figure income. Here in Detroit, shit, you're top 0.5%. Okay, if you get to a 6-figure income. So let's be real. That's what I want to share with individuals because I'm seeing it, man. I'm seeing these individuals joining these organizations, joining these businesses. I'm getting the phone calls and text messages. I'm not myopic, so I'm always willing to kind of sort of listen to see whether or not something's consistent. If not just for myself, just for the people around me. So when individuals ask me about it, I'm aware. But I need people to understand, look, no, the money's not going to fall like manna from the sky. No, you don't get paid equivalent with your desire. This is not the movies. In the movies, people achieve and things happen commensurate with their desire. No, you don't get what you desire in life. You get in life the amount of work that you put in. You get in life, you get rewarded for the value you bring to the marketplace. Okay, people don't rise to the level of desire or want. They rise to the level of achievement. They rise to the level of training. They rise to the level of expertise. And you need to be acutely aware of that. There are skills that you have to learn. There's a certain knowledge that you need to have. Look, if you're earning $30,000 a year, no business that you join is going to immediately put you at $100,000 a year unless you become $100,000 a year person in your thinking and in your behavior.
Yeah.
That means the $30,000 you must die. The attitudes, the behaviors, the thinking, the friends. I'm not saying diss your friends, but you have to distance yourself and make some new friends. That $30,000 a year person has a certain comfort zone, a certain modus operandus, and that modus operandus is not going to serve you when you get to the six-figure piece, right? I'm telling you, money and success is like water. It will find its level. So I'm sorry I had to go in on that.
No, I think it's important, especially because like when I'm looking at, especially in my realm of marketing, right? The reason why this came up is because I talked about how much I hate the word passive income, because I have so many people who come to me of like, oh, I want to build this course, I want to build this, or I want to do this, and it's gonna bring me all this passive income, and I just have to do it once and it's done. And it's like, I get always angry about it, but I'm always like making sure that they understand that the amount of work that they have to put in to sell that passive income, to market that passive income, is like triple the amount of their one-on-one service or whatever they're doing normally. You have to be relentless about your marketability and your push to get that quote unquote passive. And it's not passive. You got to work your ass off to get that passive, or to get that product or service or whatever just off the ground, right? And I think it's so important. It's when you see ads on social media for so-and-so's course, for so-and-so's product, for whatever, in these amazing sales pages, or I can't tell you how many TikToks I've watched of people being like, you can set up this drop shipping Shopify. It all happens in your sleep, right? These, like, I cannot tell you how much abundance there is of people pushing that and saying like, oh, I've made all this money, whatever. Like you said, there's a story behind that story, right? Of why they've gotten to that point or why it is that way. They're, and it's very, very easy to be like, I'm just going to slap this together. I'm going to put this together and it's just going to work. It doesn't happen that way. It just doesn't happen that way.
No. There's one individual that's out there whom I really appreciate. And look, I don't agree with anyone 100%. We're human beings, okay? We're sentient beings. We have our own thought processes and our own feelings, and things land differently and they're applicable. Eat the fruit, spit out the seed. But there is one individual whom I really like that I'm thinking about that speaks to this, and that's Gary Vee, right? Yeah. He's not everyone's cup of tea. He has his own style, his own music. He has his own soundtrack. Not everyone likes his music. But the bottom line is he's very honest. And I love that about him, about how he would say, he worked his face off to get to where he's at now, right? And I just want people to understand that. I'm really getting irked watching these Facebook posts in particular, which is why I think I stay off Facebook a lot, where you have people talking about, no, you don't have to work and this, that, and the other, and balance, and this ideal that, somehow the money's going to fall from the sky if you just, no.
I built my six-figure business working 2 hours a day.
Oh my God.
I'm sure you did.
Yeah.
I'm sure you
did. Anyway, moving on from that. The other thing that I want people, the other gift that I would hope for, is that people understand this pandemic isn't going anywhere, right? It's not going anywhere. And the COVID-19 outbreak, whatever you want to call it, is going to be here. And it's just going to be imperative upon us. In other words, things aren't going back to quote unquote normal. Okay, that's done. Life has changed irreparably. I wouldn't say irreparably, because we have to always adapt and change and do things we need to do, but it's going to be irrevocable in terms of what has happened. And I really want the entrepreneurial community to come to grips with that. And instead of being upset and living in the pain of the discomfort that's taking place right now, begin to ask ourselves, what can we do? What solutions can we provide? What type of services can we introduce? How can we solve people's problems?
I think another thing with that too is with it not going away, with things not going back to the way it was, there have been certain conveniences now that have been developed through the pandemic. Curbside pickup, delivery that wasn't available before, appointment setting, one-on-one. If you have had to implement those things in your business as an extra convenience now for people, you're not going to be able to get rid of that, right? And that's not a bad thing, but that people will now expect those conveniences forever.
Yes.
Like, that's just the way it is. If like you're not, it's going to be very difficult for you to survive by reverting back anyway. Because if you've offered opportunities for someone to shop with you exclusively, just them in the store, good luck removing that. When someone now, you've created this great special opportunity or curbside pickup or free delivery for certain things or whatever. When I think of like the real brick and mortar type of restaurants or shops, to a certain extent, people are going to expect that forever.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. And like you said before, that doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing.
Right.
You can find ways to actually become more efficient and find ways to scale that even more. And so, yeah, I mean, there's so many changes that have taken place. I mean, we go on and on about this topic and we're running short on time, but hopefully people get the gist of what we're talking about here, right? It really is time. This is my biggest concern, and I'll end here, and you know how we wrap up. But my biggest concern is I remember 2008, and I think about the impact of 2008, how Detroit, for a long, I mean, huge swaths of Detroiters, I mean, they went from property owners to renters, and we're still dealing with the impact of that today. You had a lot of business owners who, quite frankly, never quite fully recovered from 2008, and 2020 just did them in, right? It was just a wrap after that. And access to capital, access to resources, certain, prejudicial attitudes, behaviors, and systems were put in place, obviously, to keep a lot of Detroiters from recovering. But that's why it poses a very important it's an important responsibility for us to address that now. Is why I thought about the whole think tank piece. What I don't want Detroit to do is exhale. Let me just cut right to the chase. No, Detroit, do not exhale. Biden got, he's going to be our president. Harris, historical moment for her to be our VP. No, you don't exhale.
Right.
Do not exhale. People exhaled when Detroit, in particular, I'm speaking of Detroit, exhaled when Obama got elected. Look, I was excited. I was happy too. But now is not the time to exhale. Now is the time to hold people's feet to the fire and say, these are the things that we need. And we elected you, literally elected you. We delivered the presidency to you. We delivered the office to you. But we need to take that attitude, not just on a federal level, but locally with these politicians who are here, right? Whether it be the mayor, the governor, congressmen, senators, et cetera, don't exhale. We need to step on the pedal even more so than ever. Because what's going to end up happening is, and this is my grocery list, that these things not happen. These are the things that this is my gifts. These things. I don't want to see more Detroiters lose their homes. I don't believe a home is quote unquote the best investment in the world, but for the majority of the population, it's the only investment that they'll ever really make. We need to make sure that we do everything we can as entrepreneurs to find ways to not allow that to transpire. We can't allow certain businesses to go under. It just can't happen. If those businesses are bringing value to the marketplace, we got to find ways to support them, right? You have certain people who are operating within our ecosystem that are delivering services and genuinely helping people out. I mean, they're literally like lifesavers in the ocean, right? We need to make sure those people get taken care of. We need to make sure those people get uplifted. We need to make sure those people end up in front of the camera. The popularity contest got to come to an end, right? We need to start to elevate people who are in the field doing the work and making an impact, right? These are the things that I hope for, that I want to see, because like I said before, I want to see the city rebound in spectacular fashion. And I want to see the people who've been here through the blight, through the trials and tribulations, participate in the abundance that's going to transpire. So, that's my Christmas wish list, like those things getting addressed, access to capital, right? And once again, having the tools and the resources so when you get the capital, you utilize it wisely, and we embody a spirit of Litmus Decline. Like I want to see a cultural renaissance transpire in the city, right? And people who are investing in that, I want to see them come together, congregate together, and be about getting the work done. Because I truly believe a rising tide lifts all ships. So I'm done because I'm going to start preaching, Michelle, and I got to cut myself off. I just looked at my phone like, oh, let me stop. All right.
On that note, please communicate with us. Please share with us. Please offer your insight into this. What's on your wish list? What would you hope for this community, right? What are you always struggling to see or find or would love to see more of, right? Outside of what we went over today, or what ideas can you elaborate on what we talked about as well? We'd love to hear that as well. So please comment below here. Share this with anyone that can find value in this. Reach out to us. Let's have longer discussions.